All right. Hi, everyone. It is Queen Cole here, your host of Light the Path podcast. And this is a bonus episode. According to the National Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And in order to bring awareness to the issue, the month of September is recognized as Suicide Prevention Month. So this bonus episode, I'll be talking about suicide prevention. And joining me on today's show is Dr. LuLu. She is a pediatrician, UN, and a TEDx 2020 speaker, suicide activist, Teen Alive, Dr. LuLu's Youth Health Center. So will you help me welcome Dr. LuLu to Light the Path? Insert.
I should give me one of those clappers.
Yes.
Someone introduces me, or I introduce them. I should get me one of those clappers. Yes. So I'm happy to be here. I'm so excited.
Yes. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you for taking the time out to talk about this situation that is a huge problem. It's a huge concern. And I love the fact that you look like me, so I can accept the information a little bit more. I feel like there's a little bit more love to it. So Dr.
I love it. And the funny thing about that is the reason I started my own podcast was because of what you just said. I couldn't find anyone that looked like me, talked like me, got locks, African, whatever, doctor, pediatrician. I could not find one person like me talking only about suicide. The niches are in the ditches or whatever, right? So I was like, you know what? Why not me? I mean, like, why not me? Like, why not me? And like my brother said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take on this giant, this mammoth, and let's see how it goes.
Hey. Yes. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. I said all these great things about you. First of all, how are you doing amidst this pandemic? And then tell us about your TEDx, please, please, please.
I know, girl. I think, and I feel like Erykah Badu. She said my high is coming down. My high is not coming down. Like, so I'm the opposite. It's been just, I don't know where to. Okay, first of all, I was born, bred, buttered, and slightly burned in Nigeria. I'm just going to put that out there. So I'm Nigerian by birth. And in December of last year, I went to Nigeria, I had some speaking engagements. While I was there, I went, because we normally make our clothes. Okay. So I went to this lady who's like a fashion designer, and she made a blouse for me. So I was like, okay, ma'am, this blouse better look good because I'm about to wear it for my TEDx talk next year. She was like, what's that? I was like, it's just some fancy talk that, people do across the globe, but it's like really big, and it makes you like, puts you like on the path. It was in March of this year, during the lockdown. I said to myself, what am I going to do in that time? Let me apply for a TEDx talk. Wow. So literally, I didn't have a TEDx talk when I said that. And I say that because of the power of words, the power of your thoughts, the power of conviction. When you're convinced about something and you speak it, it's going to happen. And so I say that because, well, first of all, because the TEDx talk took place and I wore the blouse, right?
Yes.
But also because people say stuff like, my life is over. I'm done. I'm dead. Oh, never mind me. I'm just a mess. Yeah. Negative affirmations. Like the people who say these are pastors' wives, like everybody. If you don't become intentional and present and mindful in everything about you and your life, you will say stuff like that will come into fruition. So when I was suicidal myself in 2015, for about 6 months or so, from November through about April or May, I was like, it's over. I'm a bad person. I'm a bad mom. The world don't even need no failures like me. My kids don't need a mom that is a failure. None of that. I'm out. Yeah. So when I'm talking about it, it's not just like, oh, just a doctor. No, like I'm literally talking my walk. So
Yeah.
I say that because people don't realize that your thoughts are powerful. And so in one of the courses that I teach is called Controlling Your Anxiety. The
Mm,
subtitle is Calming Your Inner Storms so you can become the master of your thoughts, because your thoughts will lead you to freedom, will lead you to failure, will lead you to success if you just think it and then
mhm.
believe it and then do the work. Because you can put all the vision boards in the world out there. You see
Yeah.
yourself as the king of Judea. Great. You got to go to Judea. You got to convince those folk to vote for you. You got to do what you can do for them to vote for you. You know what I mean? So you can say what you want to say. I had proclaimed that I was going to do the TEDx talk in 2020,
Hmm.
and I didn't even think about it again. Then there was a pandemic. I'm like, okay, so I can sit here and just be woeing is mean all day, or I can just see about applying to some TEDx talk and see what's going to happen, and then put forth the effort, and the rest is history. So it happened this past weekend, and my title is Why Our Children Kill Themselves. And in
Mm,
parentheses, it says, not what you think. Because I know I'm going to ask you this question. When you hear about suicide in a child and an adult, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
I think about I think about bullying. I think about somebody that has probably been bullied, been just ostracized, and just pushed to the limit. Myself, I was in a situation. I recall that I was going through a divorce, and we haven't got to the divorce part yet. But that road to it, there was one day I was laying in bed, and I looked. We had a two-story home. I looked out the window, and I imagined myself jumping out the window. And when I jumped out the window, though, I didn't die. I was hurt very bad. And that brought me back into the room, back into the bed, and said, that's not the answer. So when you said these things about affirmations and what we speak to ourselves, if we the thoughts that we have in our mind, if we let other people talk to us like that, we want to fight. We want to
Oh,
go
wow.
crazy. Yeah,
You can say
but
that again to those at the back.
ourselves,
That is so true. Yes. People say, you say stuff to yourself that you will never let anybody say to you. Well,
mhm,
I say that knowing that most of these thoughts, these intrusive thoughts, also do come in honesty from the things that were said to us when we were younger. And so you can never really divorce a child, or rather an adult, from their inner child. If your
yeah,
inner child was ostracized and bullied and overwhelmed and burned out, which when I say slightly burned, people don't know, I mean that I was raped and I was molested when I was in Nigeria. So that's what I mean by slightly burned. But today I'm no longer a victim. I'm in thriving hood, right? So it's not an issue for me anymore. But I know because I've walked that path. But people do not, they underestimate the power of what was said to you. And my one of my best examples is a toddler says, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." I'm like, "Oh, hi, yes, what is it? What can mommy do for you? What is it? What you need?" And then the toddler is 12 years old. "Mommy, mommy, mommy, what is it? What do you need? Can't you see that I'm busy?" The same
mm,
child,
mhm,
especially in the African American community. I can't tell you how many times I tell people just yelling is a form of verbal bullying, and there's, oh my God, I have to yell. Ooh, Dr. Lulu, don't tell me I can't yell now. I gotta yell because my parents raised me yelling and whatever, and that's all I know, right? The question is, if your coworker did the same thing your child did,
mhm,
your
mhm,
if your boss did the same thing your child did, will you be yelling at your boss? And if the answer is no, then that means you're doing it because you can. And you're
yep,
doing it because your child is a minor. You're doing it because you feel you have control over them. Which
mhm,
brings us back to bullying, which is what you said, which was correct. That bullying and overwhelmness and burnout and ostracization and loneliness and isolation, all of those things are what cause people to want to kill themselves. So you are one of the very few people that got that question right. Almost everybody else, including clinicians and doctors, will say, oh, mental illness, oh, depression. And so I'm quick to say, while depression increases the risk for suicide, in children, you must check the underlying cause.
Yeah.
Why is that child depressed? Because no child was born sad and depressed, right? And wanting to kill themselves. Something happened between that happy toddler and the angry teenager.
Yeah.
And that's where we come in. When I ask people, I said, what is your role in your child's suicide? People are like, oh my God, no.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
you ask the average child what's their reason for wanting to kill themselves, the parents or the family will make that list. But
Yeah.
you're supposed to be their keeper. You're supposed to be their guardian. You're supposed to be the one person that is like accepting them fully. The African American community is notorious for praying, and it's awesome. But it's not everything that you use prayer as the only. I want you to hear what I'm saying, because I'm a praying person too. But you don't toss prayer at everything.
Yeah.
Some things you just need to analyze what the heck is going on. If your car doesn't start, you don't say, oh, I'm just going to pray alone. No, you pray and you check it, take it to the mechanic.
Yes.
If your child is in distress, you pray, but you take your child, get them help. But for some reason, we don't do that. Well, you need to pray some more. You need more Jesus. Or, you're not Christian enough. No. Last week, they were happy. Last month, they were okay. Last year, they were fine. Today, they're not. Something has happened. And you can't
Yeah.
really. Go ahead.
And that's what I was going to ask too. Like, how do we, I mean, even as parents, as, all the listeners, how do we proceed when we hear someone says that they were thinking about suicide, or we start seeing the writing on the wall? So yes, for the Christians, pray, but then also, how do we proceed with that action? What is that action? How do we go from there?
So the first thing to do is to believe them the first time. And that's what my Angela said. Angela said, when somebody shows you their true colors. I say when somebody tells you they're suicidal, just to play on words, believe them the first time, because you don't know that I can't do it. We talked about the power of the thoughts and the power of the mindset. And yes, while you didn't jump, many of my patients have jumped. Many people that we know have jumped and either become paralyzed from the neck down or dead. They went head first or whatever. So while you didn't jump, many, many, many other people will jump if you get into the amount, if the pain is enough for you. Because what's pain enough for you may not be pain enough for me. And so, so you don't downplay my pain. You don't know my pain tolerance. As an example, I had 3 babies without epidural. It doesn't mean I wasn't pain. Epidural, but I could do it without epidural, so I did. Besides, I wanted to do my first baby. I wanted to just have a baby without epidural. They did give me an epidural. They gave me an epidural, but it was too late. But the baby was already coming out. So by the time they gave it, I had already had the baby. So I'm like, you know what? If I could do it with him, I'm going to do it with the second one. So my why is different. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to try with the second guy. I was like, I'm going to do this. Again, the power of intent and conviction. I am going to have this baby without an epidural. And I did. And I was in labor for 23 hours. So I'm not talking about like a few hours. No. The point I'm making is you will surprise yourself the power of your mind.
Yeah.
You could really, truly go back to the days of Noah. We could move objects with our minds. Jesus did it. Yes, he was part God, but the man in him was just 100% man, like he was 100% God.
Yeah.
And the 100% man in him wept and literally fell, not once, not twice, but 3 times under the weight of the cross. So he was not that much God that he couldn't fall, if that makes sense. So when people preach, because I used to teach Bible study when I was a younger version of me, when people want to go to, I said, look, how much of Jesus the man do you talk about? Because people talk about Jesus the God too much. He's asking you to look at yourself as the image and likeness before looking at him, right? Okay, of course, He comes first. We know that. But you cannot tell me you love God so much, you carry a Bible and take a picture in front of the church in DC as a president, but you hate other people. So, I love me, rest in peace, John Lewis. He was talking about getting into good trouble. You can't do it right if you don't get into good trouble. Martin
Exactly.
Luther King got into good trouble. Malcolm X got into good trouble. Mandela got into good trouble. You have to get into good trouble most times to get it right. And so to the African Americans, do pray, but take your child and get some help. Take yourself and get some help. We have transgenerational trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sins of our fathers, if you want to call it sins, things that we brought that were given to me at birth from my mother.
Yeah.
We have to stop some of those things. We can't keep on doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And so when I coach my parents, when I coach my patients, I tell them that I said, I can't work with the teenager by themselves in isolation. They're going to come back to the house. So I need
Yeah.
to work as well, so that everybody knows, what time it is and what needs to be done. And we could go on and on and on. So what was your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, no, you're all in this. I'm here for all of this, and this is why we're doing this bonus episode, to really get educated about it and to break the stigma. I know there's a stigma with the Black community. You don't want to talk about mental health, don't want to talk about mental illness, and don't want to talk about suicide. But about 8,000 individuals take their own lives globally, and then 5,000 of those people are men. So that is a trend. About 75% of those people are men. So
Let
let's
me
talk to
correct
the
that.
men right now,
Yeah,
because
let's correct
they're
that.
more successful.
No, let's correct that. First of all, it's 800,000 people globally, nearly a million. As a matter of fact, I have some news for you. In the year 2020, the WHO predicted that every 20 seconds we're going to have a suicide. 2019, it was every 40 seconds. So however long we've been speaking, you can do the math. So
Wow.
globally last year, it was 800,000 people, which is basically a million or more. Why? Why do I say that? Because most suicides in the Black community are not reported. I mean, let's just come out and say it.
Yeah.
However, even as it's underreported everywhere across the globe, African American children aged 5 through 12 are twice as likely as their white counterparts to die by suicide. Look up the numbers. So when you first started this interview, you said suicide is the 10th leading cause of death. That is for adults. As a pediatrician, I don't mess with adults. I ain't got time for that because I'm too busy worrying about the fact that suicide is the second leading cause of death for kids age 10
Wow.
through 34, which as a
Wow.
50-year-old, I can call a 34-year-old a kid in a sense before people start throwing sticks at me. Youth, kids, whatever, age 10 through 34. In 2016, that age bracket was 15 through 24. In 2020, actually in 2017, it went up to 10 through 34. Just so you can get a feel of what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
So COVID-19 has killed maybe an excess of maybe, I don't know, 100,000 or more in America.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is going up in arms, right? We're talking about something that is killing someone every 20 seconds, 1.2 million. And then we're not even sure because the truth is, we don't know for sure. Last weekend, another pediatrician doctor like me took his life. Doctors have the highest rate of suicide. Here's the thing with me, as I'm talking to you right now, I'm an immigrant. We have a high rate of suicide. I'm a Black female. We do have a high rate of suicide. They don't talk about it, but we do. When I was writing my second book, I looked up Black women suicide. I couldn't believe Oprah made the list. Michelle Williams from the Destiny's Child made the list. A lot of people that didn't make it made the list. And I was like, what the heck? Okay. And then I'm also a veteran. Everyone that knows veterans know that 22 of us die every day by suicide. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm also a doctor. So I just told you doctors have the highest rate of suicides amongst all the white collar jobs, about 1.1 doctors per day. But also, again, most of them are not reported as suicides. So I could go on and on and on. So this is not a joke. Like, I literally, if you pick me, I represent suicide. So why not? Why not talk about it? Because talking about suicide for me is talking about life, not death. And I know some people mix it up. I'm not talking about death. I'm talking to you so that you
About
can,
life.
yeah, so that the life that you might save might be yours. It's about living after all. So yes, I talk about premature death of your by your own hands because it shouldn't be so. So the flip side is I'm asking you to stay, to live, you know, and that's all she wrote basically. So to answer your question, because I saw your questions earlier on, men generally have issues that make them die more by suicide than women. The first thing is something called toxic masculinity, where
Mm,
men think that they're all gangster and they ain't even like they don't want to hear nothing. They got it. They're bold, bad, whatever. And men like that suffer more with mental health challenges. And I don't like to use the word mental illness because, like you said at the beginning, there's a huge stigma about mental illness. So if a child is, for instance, like you said, is being bullied or being raped by their uncle, and you take them to the doctor because they're acting kind of weird, what would the doctor do? Here's some medication.
yep.
But the child is being bullied at school or being raped every day by their pastor or their priest. I can go there because it happens.
Yes.
So it's not a mentally ill child you're looking at, it's a traumatized child you're looking at. So fast forward that child to an adult, and then he happens to be male. Oh my goodness, black male, or maybe white male, don't matter. They don't want to show their pain. They have to be stoic the whole time. They got to be Spartan boys and all little Davids and Goliaths, whatever. And people like that tend to have more use of alcohol because they really do have pain inside that they don't want to accept. They don't want to speak of it. So it comes back and it haunts them, right? Then also substance abuse is higher in men like that, toxic masculinity. And then we're not going to leave this out because it's real. Men who are on the DL, LGBTQ men,
Mm,
who African Americans specifically they throw the Bible at them because, oh my goodness, you're from the devil. And, people like that are trapped in a body that they did not ask for. And they feel isolated,
mhm.
ostracized, bullied. There's a lot of homophobia for trans women, which the definition of a trans woman is a man that became a woman, okay, that identifies more with a woman. So there's a high homophobia, the homicide rate is high for them. Then the suicide rate is also high for them because they can't live like they really want to be. The black men who have sex with them kill them. I mean, let's come out and say it.
Yep.
The number of
Yep.
people who kill trans women are black men. Black trans women are black men. And then, so besides that, we've had the toxic masculinity, we have the drugs and alcohol, substance abuse, then we have the LGBTQ men, then we have police brutality and racism, which they didn't even, that's the cherry on top, right? For just any black male, like my three beautiful sons who are just blessings from God, they step out the door and suddenly somebody's like, oh, there's a black man, he's dangerous, kill him.
It's a threat.
So
He's,
there's a lot of things. And then the final straw that literally, I don't know, the final straw is that men tend to use more fatal means. They are more likely to go for the handgun or I mean, they hang themselves also, but across the board, men use more fatal means. Women use usually poison or a slit wrist. Now, a slit wrist can kill you. Don't get me wrong, but then if you slice your wrist and maybe someone comes and catches you on time before you bleed out, But generally, men don't do that. They'll get a gun and they'll go or they walk into the train. They would do it. So they tend to take more legal means. So so it's about 6 or 7 reasons why men. So most people just think it's because they use a firearm. Yeah, that's true. But there are all these other reasons. Toxic masculinity is number one. They don't want to ask for help. They don't want to ever use their mouth to say that, oh my goodness, I'm hurting. Oh my God, no.
I need help. Yeah.
And then if they are
Mhm.
pastors, they're, the head of the household, they're looking at it like people are going to think I'm weak. People are, I struggle with suicidal ideations until the day I open my mouth and say, you know what, that's it, I'm done. Because I was driving down the highway in San Antonio and trying to find a way out, right? Thank God I didn't do it. But, you know, I was at that mindset. And I had resigned that, my kids don't need a mom that's a failure. And I was believing all of this mess. So, the short message is, don't give in to those thoughts because they're very loud and very insistent. And so, what you need to do is you need to challenge the thoughts and tell them, no, I'm not a failure. Last week I did this. Last month I did that. I have 3 beautiful kids. I have, I'm, whatever. I don't know. Your life. Fight that because your mind wants to go back there. And then 2 years ago, 2018, my New Year resolution was to never say anything negative to myself ever again, like about me or no. I might not be
Mm.
braggadocious. I'm not going to hear you. Never hear me say, "Oh, girl, you know me. I'm stupid." No, because your brain is looking for those things and they grab onto them, and so.
Yes. Absolutely. And I'm thankful that you didn't do it because we need you here. We need to hear more about this and we need to help so many other people. So I'm thankful that that didn't happen. So what does the aftercare look like when somebody has attempted but then survived? Like how do we help at that situation? I mean, because I would think that you need some kind of help or aftercare to if you've made that attempt.
So, of course, an attempt, you know, depends on the severity of the wounds. An attempt with a firearm is usually tends to be higher, right? In the critical list, so to say, versus, like I said, an attempt with a slit wrist or an attempt with a hanging if we can cut the rope down early enough. So it really just depends on the severity of the injury. I mean, and that's the long and short of it as far as the individual goes. But what's maybe more important is because we're Suicide Prevention Month or Suicide Awareness Month is for families of suicide attempt survivors or suicided people, family members of those individuals, patient zero, they have a higher rate of suicide than anybody
Mm.
else. And so I have on the 26th of September, I'm going to be, hosting a suicide prevention summit. It's going to be called Dr. Lulu's Stop Suicide Now Summit. And it's mainly for family members of people who have attempted, like you said, right? People who know people who have attempted, people who themselves have attempted, right? Those are the people that, we need to we need to talk to because they have a higher rate of suicide. And honestly, there's something called the suicide contagion, which most people don't know about, whereby my neighbor across the street, his son killed himself in June, and my
Wow.
son knew him, right? Now, if there's a situation going on in my home where my sons are feeling triggered or at risk of killing themselves because they know someone who did it, it can become a contagion, like it can become contagious. Like we literally, that's what it is. And so when we talk about suicide too much, or we talk about, is in the news and the person is at risk, they can attempt or they can actually die by suicide. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. So as far as the care, obviously talk therapy. I mean, you cannot underestimate the fact that people need to talk about their pain because it's a deep pain called psychic pain. Is a deep pain that pain medicine can't really fix. It's like, first of all, you lost someone, right? Second of all, you almost lost someone. So there's a lot of guilt usually with that. Like, oh, what did I do wrong? And sometimes maybe something you did, sometimes maybe it's not something you did. We've talked about all the things that can cause people to become suicidal, you know, bullying, child abuse, domestic violence, racism, police brutality, toxic relationships, divorce, financial issues. While the child may not have financial issues, by proxy, if their parents are struggling financially, they might become abusive towards the child. So
Yeah.
vicariously, the child is traumatized. So it's all of these things that happen in the society that trigger people to become suicidal, not just. And that's why I don't like when people just say mental illness. Mental illness. Every time you look on the news, you seldom see someone that died by suicide that they don't say, oh, they said that he struggled with or she struggled with mental illness. And I don't like that because there's already a stigma about mental illness. And people who are not mentally ill, you can give them all the antidepressants like I was, right? They're not going to get better and it's not going to protect them from suicide. And so mislabeling is part of the reason why people don't ask for help because they don't want you to say, oh my God, let's go get you some medicines.
Yeah,
No.
you got mental illness.
Yeah, what's happening is my next door neighbor, every time you go to work, he comes into the house and rapes me or something like that and threatens to kill me if I tell him. And this is a child who doesn't know any better, right? So it's not as simple as that, And of course, if a child becomes addicted to drugs, and then you're focused on the addiction, which is the behavior, and not what happened? Why did they, before they even thought about, I'll take the drugs, what was going on in their life? And so it's not as straightforward as that. So if that child attempts suicide, whatever was going on in the child's life, we need to still take care of it because that means they didn't die, right? We
Yeah.
need to fix that toxic environment. Otherwise, it's just a matter of time. And so if there's ever been a time when we need to be more mindful and more intentional and more present with our kids is when the child attempts suicide. And I have a t-shirt that my wife made. Oh my goodness, I don't have it. I wore it yesterday that said a suicide attempt is never a cry for attention. It's always a cry for help. So people look at it like, oh, they're just lazy or they're just, I don't know, they just toss out something out there to try to explain why the child attempted suicide. Meanwhile, the whole time is none of that. The child truly was being, sodomized or molested or, verbally abused or cyberbullied, right? With social media, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
ostracized.
Yeah.
All of these things can happen and make the child get the t-shirt. I didn't look at it though. Let me have the t-shirt. And make the child, just say, you know what? I don't want to be a burden anymore, my friends. No one loves me. No one sees me. No one cares about me. I'm just gonna walk. And so if there's one thing I'm gonna say is if your child attempts suicide, this is the time to stop everything you're doing and check the environment. Because usually the triggers for the child are within 100 square foot or at the most 200 square foot from where the child is standing. So we need to check for what happened. What made that child do that? And be thankful
Absolutely.
that they didn't die. But needless to say, people that attempted suicide within the first 12 weeks or 3 months, they have a high rate of completing the suicide. So it's a very high risk person we're talking about that has attempted suicide significantly, right? Besides the fact that, like I said earlier on, they now have a high rate of suicide in their family now because we have an index case. So it can become a vicious cycle. And like I said, my neighbor or their friends at school can also mimic the behavior.
Yes.
Well, if John did it and now he's free now, right? I don't need this too. So it becomes a contagion. And
Mhm.
that's what they call a suicide cluster, whereby you have a high rate of suicide in a particular geographic location more than is normal for them. Like in San Antonio, Texas, between November and February of this year, we had 6 kids, all aged between 12 and 20. That's a high rate for San Antonio. That's a cluster.
Wow. Wow. And see, when that Netflix show had came out, 13 Reasons, people were saying that if your children were watching this, that possibly they would go this way. I did watch the series because I wanted to have an understanding, like, what are they watching? I have young adults, so I don't think my son watched it. My daughter, I believe, watched some of it. So I wanted to be aware, like, what are they looking at? What are they digesting? So, and I have heard that it can be contagious.
Triggered. I
And
mean,
that's
it's triggered. Yeah, it's triggered, and that is true. But here's my take on it, and of course, it's my own take. It may not be it may not even be every mom's take. It may not be every pediatrician's take. Just the way I speak about youth suicide, and some people are like, oh my God, why are you talking about that? That's the same way that movie needed to be made. As far as I am concerned. And of course, I definitely empathize with anyone whose child was triggered. But a suicide contagion only triggers people who are already at risk. I'm going to say that again for those at the back. It would trigger those who are already at risk. I watched 13 Reasons Why with my son. He was 13 then, a couple of years ago. I don't know, he's 15 now. I don't know how many years ago. But he was either 13 or about to be 13 or maybe just below 13. He and I sat and watched it and we discussed it. You see, that's why people are afraid of talking about suicide. And I tell people, talking about it is not going to make somebody who is not triggered or who doesn't have a high risk become suicidal. If anything at all, it's going to make them say, oh my goodness, let's talk about it. Oh, my friend or my cousin or my brother. When I was thinking about doing a suicide prevention online course, I asked my kids what questions they would like to know. Everybody was saying what they wanted to know, And my son, the baby, he was the one that said, how will I know if my friend is suicidal? So you see, it because I have that communication with my kids. So I said, oh my God, thank you for asking that question, because this is what you do, that. Now, if I didn't have an open communication line with him, he's not going to ask me that. So there's always more than one way to look at any situation. I'm not saying that the movie didn't trigger, but I'm saying that it triggers those who are already potentially at risk. And they're already at risk anyway. So we need to do our part, because 4 out of 5 kids who attempt suicide will leave a sign. They will leave a sign. So that person who attempted suicide, you missed the signs. 4 out of 5 is 80%. If there's 80% chance of rain, you're going to get rain. And even that 1 out of 5, maybe we just don't know what signs they left, but 9 times out of 10, they will leave a sign. So it's your job as a parent to know your kid. And so I like to use the mnemonic TALK, TALK, where T stands for tune in to the right radio frequency of your child, aka know your kid. A is ask the right questions. What happened? What's happening? Don't ask them why you do that, because that's judgmental. They're not going to answer you because I want to die. Why you did that? Because I want to die. Versus what happened? Oh, the neighbor's son, he's always calling me names or whatever. I don't know, as an example. Okay. L is lean in and listen to what they have to say. If you're going to ask questions, listen to what their answers. Okay. Don't ask and then you don't listen. And then K is keep communication lines open as you get them effective help, because studies have shown that kids who are formerly suicidal, if they can find one single adult in their life that they can trust, they would thrive. And so I need you watching me to be that adult. And so that comes back to say, with the rate of suicide we have in Texas, is 1 kid attempts suicide every 2 hours. So with the rate of suicide we have, or suicide attempts we have in Texas, that tells you that we, the adults, are not being the one.
Yes, I mean, and those are all great points. And I definitely agree with it, even as your children grow older, because I know we feel like at times we're like, oh, boom, I've done the foundation, like, let me back. No. Like you said, L, lean in. I'll lean in. I want to know what other kids are doing that are around you. Like, I'm being real nosy. So I love that acronym that you said, because that is it's just point blank, like, follow these and do it. And not even with just suicide, with everything else. Like, when we have to talk about police brutality, when we have to talk about systemic oppression, systematic oppression, like when we have to have these tough conversations. Okay. Yeah. See, that's a whole nother podcast. I'm gonna have to have back on Dr. LuLu. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, there are lots of reasons why we need to talk about this. And then this is my first book not this one. This one is my first book that talks about what you need to do to raise your kid that's not going to bully my kid. Your kid that's going to be resilient, that's going to be kind and mindful and thoughtful, and all of those things you need to put into your child, so your child doesn't ever find a reason to want to hurt my child, or vice versa. And this one is about youth suicide fully. So it follows 6 fictitious teens, just from different parts of the world, which is why we have a globe there, talking about the troubles that they are going. Actually, not 6, but 12 kids, but the picture shows 6. and the things that they're going through, and how each one of them ends up hurting themselves. So this is stuff that we need to talk about. So I don't mind talking about it. Honestly, I feel like I was chosen to do it, and that's all there is to it. Somebody has to talk about it. So the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention talks about talk saves lives. So I was like, okay, how do I spin this talk so that people know that we really need to talk about. You need. So I came up with those things a few years ago. I mean, a couple of years ago, I came up with that TALK. I'm like, this is pretty good. So let's do it.
That was great. That was great. And thank you so much for being on Light the Path. But before you leave, I would like for you to tell everyone, the listeners, where they can follow you at to get more information and to help support the cause that you are doing, because it's a great work. And I really appreciate you for taking the time to talk to me today.
So real quick, and thank you for having me. Real quick, first of all, I have a suicide prevention summit coming up on the 26th of September from 12 to 3 p.m. I don't know when this is going to air, but it's going to be from 12 to 3 p.m. on the 26th of September. If you go to stopsuicidenow.summit.com, stopsuicidenow.summit.com, or stopsuicidesummit.com. Both of those are mine. And right this, like literally, they are building up the because I just decided to do it over the weekend. I'm like, I need to do something. So we're building up the landing pages and everything right now. So, but that's the first one. The second one is I usually hang out on Facebook. Every once in a while, I stop by at Instagram and holla at y'all. But generally, I'm on Facebook. So my first name is Uchen and my last name is Ume. But if you look up the word Dermometrician, like on the screen right there, like literally, I own the trademark for that in America. If you look up Dr. LuLu, I own the trademark for that in America. So if you pull any of those tissues, you should find me. My YouTube channel is called Ask Dr. LuLu. My Facebook business page is Ask Dr. LuLu. My Instagram is Ask Dr. LuLu. And then I think my first name for Twitter, and then my first name for LinkedIn or something. But once you find look up the Dermometrician for real, you'll find articles that I've written, my books on Amazon. All three of them are on Amazon. And go get a copy, especially the one about the racism, because I do talk about my sons and racial profile. I mean, this is a 6 episodes right here, but I talk about my sons and what I have been through and what you and I really, what we've been going through under this police brutality stuff. So it's something that I definitely think that we need to start talking. So I want to commend you for lighting the path literally and going where most people don't want to go and asking the right questions, like, what's going on with this suicide in Black community. And that's all she wrote.
All right. That's it then. Well, thank you so much again. Thank you.